Picture this: every few generations, the world order reshuffles. Empires rise, currencies shift, power pivots. If you can decode that rhythm, you don't just survive, you thrive. Welcome to Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order. Let's cut through the noise with clarity, cadence, and conviction. Imagine zooming out of your own life for a second. Not just a few years, but centuries. What you'll notice is something profound. Everything moves in cycles. Economies, markets, nations, empires, even your own personal journey. They all rise, peak, decline, and reset. The mistake most people make is assuming today's reality will last forever. That's why they get blindsided when things inevitably shift. But if you learn to recognize cycles, you stop reacting like everyone else and start anticipating like the few who actually play the game at the highest level. Look at history: small city, states grew into empires, currencies gained global dominance, then lost it. Trade routes shifted, wealth concentrated, revolutions erupted, and new powers emerged. None of this was random. Each step followed a sequence that's been repeating for hundreds of years. It's not about superstition, it's about patterns. And if you train your eyes to see them, the future stops being a mystery. Think about the economy. People panic during recessions as if it's the end of the world. But cycles of boom and bust have always been with us. A period of growth fuels excess, too much debt, too much speculation, too much confidence. Eventually, it tips, leading to correction, which feels painful in the short term, but it resets the system so growth can start again. That rhythm is unavoidable. The people who prosper aren't the ones who resist it. They're the ones who expect it, prepare for it, and use it. The same applies at the level of nations. A country starts small. It builds productivity, education, and innovation. It becomes a global powerhouse, dominates trade, and eventually its currency becomes the standard. Wealth flows in, life gets easier, but then something dangerous creeps in: complacency. Debt piles up. Internal conflicts grow. People demand more without producing more, and while that powerhouse is distracted, a rising competitor is working harder, hungrier, more disciplined. The cycle shifts. We've seen it from the Dutch to the British to the American era, and now we're seeing signs of the next transition on the horizon. Once you accept that cycles rule everything, the question becomes, how do you use them? First, you stop clinging to the illusion of permanence. If you think the current order, whether it's a booming market, a global empire, or your own career, will last forever, you'll get crushed when reality proves you wrong. Instead, build awareness, study the patterns, ask, where in the cycle are we right now? Are we at a peak, where excesses are unsustainable? Are we at the bottom, where fear creates opportunity? The answer determines your next move. Second, you use cycles to build resilience. Don't overextend yourself during the highs, because the lows will come. Don't panic in the lows, because the highs will follow. That balance keeps you in the game when others are wiped out. The goal isn't to perfectly time the cycle, it's to stay positioned, flexible, and ready, no matter which part of the curve we're in. Third, you apply this principle to your personal journey. Your energy, your career, your relationships all move in cycles. There are times of rapid growth, times of stability, times of decline, and times of reinvention. Instead of fighting decline, use it to reset, to learn, to pivot. That way, every cycle becomes a launchpad for the next ascent. Here's the truth most people ignore. The world isn't linear, it's cyclical. Progress doesn't move in a straight line. It rises and falls in waves. And those who thrive aren't the ones who deny it, but the ones who ride it. It's like surfing. You can't control the ocean, but you can learn how to read the waves, position yourself at the right time, and ride with momentum instead of being crushed by it. When you see cycles clearly, you stop fearing change. Instead, you start using it, because what feels like the end to most is actually just the middle of a bigger rhythm. And if you're smart, that rhythm becomes your advantage. So the next time the world feels uncertain, remember, it's not chaos. It's a cycle, and cycles rule everything. When most people look at what's happening in the world, They see headlines, noise, and random events. They think the system is unpredictable, that markets swing out of nowhere, that nations rise or collapse by accident. But nothing in the big picture is random. Every outcome is the product of a cause. Every crisis, every boom, every collapse, it all flows from a chain of cause and effect. The problem is that most people chase speculation instead of truth. They guess, they gamble, they react emotionally, and in doing so, they miss the underlying drivers that actually control outcomes. If you want to win in a world that's always shifting, you have to build your decisions on cause and effect, not speculation. Take debt, for example. People speculate on markets rising or falling without asking the deeper question: what's fueling this movement? Debt is a cause. It can stimulate growth in the short term because borrowing allows for more spending, more investment, more activity. But if debt grows faster than income, it creates an inevitable effect: repayment struggles, defaults, and economic contractions. That's not opinion, that's mechanics. And yet, how many investors panic when the downturn comes, as though it appeared out of thin air? They weren't looking at the cause, so the effect felt like a shock. The same is true with societies. Internal conflicts don't just explode overnight. They build slowly, fueled by causes like wealth gaps, lack of opportunity, erosion of trust in institutions. When those causes compound, the effect is unrest, polarization, sometimes even civil breakdown. People who understand this don't get caught off guard by the flashpoint moment. They were watching the pressures build long before the explosion. Now let's talk about global power shifts. History shows that no dominant nation loses its position overnight. There are causes, like declining productivity, rising debt, overextension in wars, or weakening education systems. And there are effects: loss of competitiveness, weaker currency, challenges from rising nations. By the time the effect is obvious to everyone, the shift has already been happening for years. Those who understand cause and effect can position themselves early, while everyone else is still speculating about whether change is really happening. Speculation is emotional. It's based on what feels good, what looks exciting, or what others are hyping. People speculate because it's easier than studying reality, but speculation leaves you vulnerable. Cause and effect, on the other hand, requires discipline. It means stripping away opinions, focusing on mechanics, and asking, if this continues, what must logically follow? That's how you develop conviction. That's how you make moves that aren't based on hype but on inevitability. Think about it at a personal level. Your health, your finances, your career. None of it is random. If you consistently put in the right inputs, you get certain outputs. If you neglect the causes, poor diet, reckless spending, lack of learning, the effects will show up. Most people live reactively, shocked by the effects without ever examining the causes they themselves set in motion. But if you flip the mindset, if you focus on causes every day, the effects take care of themselves. This principle is liberating because it replaces fear with clarity. When markets fall, most people panic. But someone focused on cause and effect knows it's part of the debt cycle, part of the natural rhythm, and prepares accordingly. When a country looks unstable, most speculate about whether it will recover. But someone who sees the underlying causes, whether productivity is rising or declining, whether innovation is accelerating or stalling, doesn't need to guess. The trajectory is already written in the causes. What separates leaders from the masses is this: leaders don't waste energy on speculation. They study reality, identify causes, and prepare for inevitable effects. They don't hope. They don't pray for luck. They align themselves with how the machine actually works. That's why when a downturn wipes out the speculators, those who understood cause and effect aren't just surviving, they're thriving. In the end, speculation is noise. Cause and effect is signal. Speculation is gambling. Cause and effect is strategy. And strategy always beats gambling in the long run. So the choice is simple. Either you play the game on emotions and guesses, or you discipline yourself to see the mechanics, connect the dots, and act with conviction. The world doesn't reward those who get lucky. It rewards those who understand the forces shaping it. And those forces are always cause and effect. Most people make decisions based on feelings, opinions, or what everyone else is doing. They ride waves of excitement when things look good, and they fall into despair when things turn sour. But the truth is, if you want clarity in an uncertain world, you don't look at emotions. You look at fundamentals. Fundamentals are the hard metrics, the underlying drivers, the indicators that tell you where things are headed long before the crowd figures it out. If you can measure the fundamentals, you can strip away the noise, stop guessing, and start seeing reality as it is. Think about a nation's strength. People debate endlessly about which country is rising or declining, but the fundamentals speak louder than opinions. Is productivity improving? Is education strengthening the next generation? Is innovation accelerating or slowing down? Is debt piling up faster than income? These aren't vague ideas. They are measurable realities. And those realities dictate where a nation is headed. A country with strong education, investment in technology, disciplined finances, and global trust in its currency will rise. A country that neglects those fundamentals, no matter how powerful it looks today, is already on the path to decline. The same logic applies in business. Investors often get distracted by hype, the hot startup everyone's talking about, the flashy pitch, the soaring stock price, but real value isn't found in speculation, it's in fundamentals. What are the revenues? How healthy are the margins? Is the company innovating or just coasting? Does it carry too much debt? Is leadership disciplined and visionary? You don't need a crystal ball if you're willing to dig into the fundamentals. They show you whether growth is sustainable or whether collapse is inevitable. Markets move in cycles, and emotions swing wildly with them, but fundamentals are the compass. When prices are booming, fundamentals tell you if the rise is supported by real productivity or just debt-fueled excess. When prices crash, fundamentals tell you if it's truly broken or if the underlying system is still strong. Those who measure fundamentals act rationally while the crowd reacts emotionally. That's why they end up buying when others are panicking and exiting when others are euphoric. Measuring fundamentals isn't just about economics or business. It applies to your personal life too. Look at your health. Everyone wants to feel energetic and strong, but the fundamentals matter more than wishful thinking. Are you sleeping enough, eating right, exercising consistently, stressing less? These inputs create the outputs. Ignore them, and the effects eventually catch up. The same with personal finance. Are you saving, investing, and building assets, or are you borrowing, overspending, and depending on luck? The fundamentals predict where you'll be 5 or 10 years from now, regardless of the stories you tell yourself today. What makes fundamentals powerful is that they cut through illusions. Politicians can make promises, companies can sell hype, markets can ride bubbles, but fundamentals don't lie. Debt is debt. Productivity is productivity. Innovation is innovation. You can measure them, track them, and use them to navigate. That's why the people who succeed consistently aren't the ones who get the timing perfect or the ones who follow trends. They're the ones who study the fundamentals and position themselves according to reality. Of course, measuring fundamentals requires discipline. It's not as exciting as speculation. It means studying balance sheets, reading history, tracking education and innovation data, watching debt levels, understanding how currencies gain or lose trust. It's work. But that work pays dividends because it gives you clarity others don't have. When the crowd is lost in noise, you see signal. When they're chasing illusions, you're grounded in truth. This mindset also gives you patience. You stop needing instant results because you trust the fundamentals to play out over time. If you've done the work, if the drivers are solid, you don't panic when there's volatility. You know the foundation is strong, and eventually the effects will show. That's how you stay steady when others are being tossed around by emotion. The ultimate advantage of measuring fundamentals is that it makes you proactive instead of reactive. You don't have to wait for the crash to see the weaknesses because you already measured them. You don't have to wait for the boom to recognize opportunity because you already saw the seeds in the fundamentals. This flips the game. You're not chasing outcomes, you're predicting them. And that's how you move from playing defense to playing offense. At the end of the day, reality doesn't care about opinions, hype, or speculation. It responds to fundamentals. Those who measure them, understand them, and act on them are the ones who win consistently across cycles, across nations, across markets. Everyone else is left wondering what happened, blindsided by effects they never saw coming. The choice is yours: get lost in noise or get disciplined with fundamentals. One path leaves you guessing, the other gives you clarity. And clarity is power. The one thing you can guarantee about the future is that it won't look like the present. The world never stands still. Markets shift, technologies disrupt, powers rise and fall. And the people, businesses, and nations that win over the long run aren't the strongest or even the smartest. They're the ones that adapt the fastest. Agility is the edge. When you can pivot without losing momentum, when you can reinvent before you're forced to, you survive while others get left behind. Look back at history. Every empire, every company, every leader that stayed on top had one thing in common: they embraced change instead of resisting it. The Dutch dominated global trade for a time, then the British, then the Americans. Each had a period of strength, but when they stopped adapting, when they grew complacent, bloated, and rigid, the cycle moved on without them. The same is happening now. Rising powers are hungry, innovative, disciplined. Declining powers are weighed down by debt, conflict, and stagnation. Those who adapt with agility can extend their influence. Those who don't fade away. In business, agility separates the disruptors from the disrupted. Think about the companies that thrived through massive shifts. They didn't cling to old models, they pivoted. When technology changed the rules, they didn't whine about the good old days. They built for the new reality. On the flip side, the giants that collapsed weren't destroyed by external forces alone. They were destroyed by their own refusal to adapt. They had the resources, the talent, the chance to evolve, but they chose comfort over change, and comfort is always the beginning of decline. At a personal level, agility is just as critical. Careers no longer follow a straight line. The skill that made you valuable yesterday may be obsolete tomorrow. The people who keep growing are those who stay curious, keep learning, and reinvent themselves before the world demands it. They don't hold on to old identities because they know adaptability is the real security. The moment you think you've arrived, you stop moving, and the world passes you by. Adapting with agility doesn't mean chasing every new trend blindly. It means being aware, scanning the horizon, and knowing when to pivot with purpose. It's about balancing roots with flexibility. You keep your principles, but you evolve your strategies. You keep your mission, but you shift your methods. That balance is what keeps you relevant. Without it, you either become stuck in the past or lost in distraction. Agility also means accepting reality quickly. When circumstances change, most people waste energy denying it. They cling to what used to work, hoping it will magically come back. But reality doesn't wait for your comfort. The faster you accept the new conditions, the faster you can respond. That speed of acceptance is the difference between staying in control and being controlled. There is also a humility to agility. It requires admitting you don't know everything, that your current way may not be the best way, that others may have insights you don't. The arrogant resist change because they think they're untouchable. The agile stay humble enough to learn, to listen, to upgrade. That humility is what keeps them sharp. And here's the most important part. Agility compounds. Every time you adapt, you gain resilience. You learn how to navigate uncertainty, how to reinvent without fear. Over time, that muscle becomes second nature. While others freeze at the first sign of disruption, you're already moving, already experimenting, already evolving. You stop fearing change because change becomes your advantage. When the world shifts, most people get stuck in one of two traps: denial or panic. Denial keeps them frozen in old systems that no longer work. Panic pushes them into reckless moves without strategy. But agility is different. Agility is calm, intentional, precise. It sees change not as a threat, but as an opening. It turns disruption into momentum. The bottom line is simple. You can't control the cycles, but you can control how you respond. The world will change whether you're ready or not. The only question is whether you resist and break, or adapt and thrive. Agility isn't optional, it's survival. And the ones who master it don't just endure the future. They shape it. Most people move through life in reaction mode. They wait until problems explode before addressing them, until opportunities are obvious before chasing them, until change is already irreversible before adjusting. By the time they act, it's too late. But the ones who consistently win, whether in business, leadership, or life, don't wait for the storm to hit. They study the signs, prepare in advance, and move with intention. That's what it means to be strategically proactive. It's not just about action. It's about intelligent action grounded in foresight. Think about how crises unfold. A financial collapse doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It's preceded by unsustainable debt, reckless speculation, and policy mistakes. A social breakdown doesn't erupt in a single night. It's built on years of inequality, division, and mistrust. A company doesn't suddenly go bankrupt. It ignores warning signs, clings to outdated models, and loses competitiveness piece by piece. To the untrained eye, these events look sudden. To someone who studies cause and effect and measures fundamentals, they're predictable, and predictability creates opportunity if you're prepared to act before everyone else wakes up. Being strategically proactive means you don't just see what's in front of you. You project forward. You ask, if this continues, what's the logical outcome? If this variable shifts, how does the system react? You're not speculating, you're connecting dots. When you think this way, your decisions are no longer based on emotion or panic. They're based on inevitability. That's why proactive leaders look calm in chaos. They aren't surprised by the storm. They've been tracking the clouds for months. It's the same in business. The greatest companies don't wait until disruption destroys their market share. They disrupt themselves before competitors can. They invest in research, technology, and talent long before those investments become trendy. They prepare for downturns while profits are still rising. And when conditions change, they're already positioned, while others are scrambling to catch up. That proactive mindset is the difference between leading an industry and being forgotten by it. On a personal level, being proactive is about designing your future instead of drifting into it. Most people only save money when they feel financial pressure. They only learn new skills when their job is at risk. They only take care of their health after a warning from the doctor. Proactive individuals flip that script. They build financial security before it's urgent. They upgrade their skills while they're still comfortable. They protect their health before it's in danger. That's why their lives look stable from the outside. It's not luck, it's preparation. But let's be clear. Being proactive doesn't mean acting on everything. It means acting strategically. It's about choosing leverage points, the few moves that will matter most in the long run. It's easy to stay busy, reacting to every piece of news or every market swing. That's not strategy. Strategic proactivity is about patience, focus, and timing. You prepare broadly, but you strike precisely when the odds are stacked in your favor. This approach requires courage because being early often looks wrong. When you prepare for a downturn while others are partying in the boom, they laugh at you. When you invest in innovation before it's profitable, people doubt you. When you pivot before the old system collapses, they call you paranoid. But when the cycle turns, when the storm hits, when the collapse comes, you're not scrambling. You're already moving ahead. That's the payoff of being proactive. You look foolish in the short run, but brilliant in the long run. The biggest advantage is psychological. When you live proactively, you don't live in fear. You're not constantly reacting to surprises because you've already built margin, already mapped scenarios, already strengthened your position. You're prepared, and preparation breeds confidence. That calmness allows you to make clear decisions under pressure while everyone else is drowning in panic. The world will always test you with uncertainty, volatility, and disruption. You can choose to react like the crowd, late, emotional, desperate, or you can choose to anticipate, prepare, and act with strategy. One path leaves you exposed, the other makes you resilient. The difference isn't luck, it's mindset. Being strategically proactive is about refusing to be a victim of circumstance. It's about making sure the future doesn't happen to you. You shape it before it arrives, so here's the bottom line. Your advantage isn't luck, it's preparation. Know the cycles, understand the drivers, monitor the metrics, adapt fast, and lead rather than follow. The world order is shifting, and if you play it smart, you don't just weather the change, you shape it. Let's get to work.